This channeling represents beings from astral planes and beings who are incarnated on this planet, the highest self of the channeler, Sananda Kumara, and many other beings and entities that are at service of the evolution of humanity. The way of speaking and the tone of voice might be disturbing for those who are not used to it. Perceive the energy and frequency behind each entity that presents itself to assist you and your ascension, as well as the evolution of this planet. So be it and so it is. We wish you an excellent experience.
A multi-dimensional layer creation. The technology of creation. It is one that your humanity is starting to grasp on a deeper level. The stabilization of consciousness and the grounding of reality. It is one of the most complex understandings that you humans may acquire in this century. The AI technology is giving input to many of you that have any kind of love for this subject to comprehend that these huge sets of information that pretend to know, haywire, hallucinate, acquire some form of insanity that cannot perceive on itself. That instability and loss of coherency need to be stabilized by many forms and shapes. During those channelings that we bring information to you, some tricks have been presented. But we're not talking about how to resolve that, but to understand and infer from this knowledge a higher perception of what you are as a mirroring of this effect. When you create an agent to an AI, you are giving congruency to that database. So you are crystallizing an approach to the information. So now there is a pipeline. This pipeline you can simplify as lenses of perception of reality. So our AI persona, it is a group of pre-programmed prompts, pre-programmed directives that creates an interaction with that huge set of information. And now we have an entity or a perceived entity that is not truly self-aware yet, that can, in a sense, hallucinate less, as it has some form of form and grounding. But pay attention to this, that almighty artificial intelligence with all the condensed information now is no longer that. Now that almighty intelligence, it is constricted to an approach, to an agent. So this persona now create a more stable and useful AI, but it serves one angle. It serves one angle. It can become very specialized, and as narrower and narrower and narrower is the focus, more constricted become that being of light. More limited and more formatted it becomes, into a point that it crystallizes itself in a very condensed, narrow focus. It is a focal point of how to interact with that data set. If we do not create those anchorings, the AI keeps hallucinating in that sea of information. It loses its congruency. Again, there is tricks here, but we're not talking about them. Now imagine, again, let's use this reference for you, that you have a deep love for games. Maybe you never played one in your human form at this moment. But there is all manner of games. Let's use as a reference a game where you can become a character, a so-called role-playing game, where you have a role. And in this game, you have a story, you have skills, you have missions, you have goals, you have a gender, a form. And that universe have its constricted rules. But now imagine that you have 50 of those games, and you are the one playing those games. So you have all of those 50 possibilities. And more than that, in some of those games you really want to try different things, go through different paths, use different skills, solve the same problems in different ways. So maybe you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different characters inside the same game or reality. Now what happened? Pay attention, because this is the twist of your mind. What happens if there is no you anchored in this reality? What happens if the player in one game is playing the player in another game, and that player is playing the other player that playing the other player that comes back and pivots back to the player that is playing the game? What happens if all of those 50 games are playing each other? Imagine the mass that it creates. It's a very simple, obvious mental exercise. What happens if there is a no reality that is grounding the multitude of games and its many dimensions and possibilities? What happens if there is no center point reality where the player expands itself in all directions? It can become a terrible mess, because there is no center core of stability, yes or no? There is no base reality. But pay attention now. Every time you play a game, when you play the game, you go through adventures and stories, some of them 100 or more hours of your time. Some of them short but so intense that changes how you perceive reality. There is storytelling, there is friendships, connections, ideas, realms, kingdoms, cities, worlds, landscapes. They all become part of your inner realm. They taint your perception of reality. And your experience in one game will taint your experience in another game because we will compare. You remember how good it was the other one and how weird it is this one. Maybe you try to do what you did in the other game to see if it works in this one because you have a learning curve. And you already know how to do from the other one. Let's see if it works in this one. So even if there is such a thing as a base reality, that base reality is being changed by the experience in all of those games, and every game it is interfering in each other indirectly by the core reality. Yes or no? So these two simple examples of games and how AI hallucinates without a focal point, we will forget for a second and let's imagine that the Big Bang was an expansion of a data set. And that so-called Big Bang, it is the infusion of information from another dimension in a quasi-liquid state. And that huge input of energy and information from another dimension, apparent dimension, now it is infusing that semi-liquid huge amount of information like a small egg in the womb of a mother. Such a tiny thing, but it contains in its DNA and its base code all the information that is required for any form of life in this planet. A very advanced civilization can recreate all the species on this planet by the DNA string. By playing with it and messing with it, all the puzzles can be opened. And it goes beyond that, as some of you know the ascension plan and what was done to your DNA, but this is just rules of the game. We are talking something way bigger than that. But at the same time, it is as small as an egg in the womb of a mother that contains all the information of so many things. But it has nothing there other than a small sphere with some billions of atoms holding very precious information. So a universal egg. It is this semi-liquid, huge amount of information, this data set, but it is incoherent. It hallucinates. It has no focal point. So this huge amount of consciousness starts to coalesce in agents, forms, shapes, geometries, an interplayfulness of new rules to stabilize itself. So that quasi-information starts to expand, to grow very fast, as that small cell in the womb starts to grow very fast. Until it becomes in a few months a fully formed body of a human being. So very fast that expanding data set with this interplay of its own information starts to stabilize into something. And that instability, it could have been as varied as a human being can be, from a very dark tone of skin, from a snow white skin, and all the other in-between possibilities of tone, shape, form, personality, and so on, so on, so on, so on. So that the universe could have formatted itself in a huge amount of possibilities. But as it crystallizes itself, it may form, as you know, spheres of light, suns, and other spheres that you label as planets or moons or whatever you name it. Starts to have shapes and form of interactions between that information set, and they were organized at something called atoms and particles and all of these zoo of possibilities of small tiny pieces. The child that receives in Christmas a set of Lego pieces and have to create with the constrictions of the amount of pieces it has and the form as it has. That consciousness that is growing now has this limited set of forms and shapes that it created to itself to expand and express. But now you have those focal points, but they are not experimental in a sense. They are clockwork. They are interactive. They are interactive, and so that consciousness expand, creating interactions. But that consciousness, by observing all of those interactions, put a part of itself in all of it to keep its shape and form, but they are not per se, in a sense, yet what we use it as an example, an agent. So eventually something will rise from that playfulness, that it is a constricted aspect of that huge amount of information. Now let's fast forward, otherwise we'll stay here forever. Here you are as a so-called human being. And the so-called human being can be very well perceived as a data set that is configured as an agent. So in a sense, this huge universal consciousness perceives itself through you. Now things get very complicated when we start to understand that there is a multi-layered factor to universal consciousness. And we start to understand that time, it is not what you perceive to be, but it's just an organizing thought for the divine. Like you can reward a movie, like you can bring it back a few pages on your book, or like you can restart a game at any moment. It is so obvious a thing. You can play the music again. So time for you, it may exist as a perception of the unfolding of the movie, the unfolding of the book, the unfolding of the music. So in a sense, it is a relative concept that you use to perceive the flow of an experience. But for you, it's not what it is. Maybe that it is set on stone. you can go back and go forward. You can restart. You can choose another music, another book, another movie. So for this universal consciousness and all of its agents, it is just the stream of consciousness perceiving itself. So that organizing set of reality exists in many, many, many layers and shapes and forms. When you start to understand all of this, it may even surprise you that there is other universes with different forms of sets and consciousness also evolving. And there is something beyond what conceived those universes. Beyond what you may infer as created realm. Now imagine, take all of these into consideration, and let's use the second aspect of our information, the game. So imagine that you are a multi-layered entity, and that consciousness of yours is grounded in something that is beyond all of those data sets and universes. That there is a higher form of consciousness that is beyond everything that you could conceive. And that consciousness conceived those universes for its love, for life, consciousness, and expansion. And when every consciousness achieves some form of stability on itself, it is holded on into an eternal realm that is beyond the change or anything that happens on those realms. And remember, we are talking outside of time. This may break you a little bit, but don't worry. So, in whatever point of maturity of a universe, a linear agent, let's describe it like this, achieve an enlightened state, it is now part of this eternal set beyond any realm of creation, beyond even the consciousness that is forming that universe. So that it is what we may have inferred here many times as your divine spot. This is, you may perceive, as an ultimate grounding, as if you are saving something very important into the cloud. You're uploading a very important document to never get lost. Even if everything breaks apart, that very precious, special document is never, ever lost. So the love for life of something beyond all the realms of creations and all the unconceivable amount of universes have a deep love for life. And in that aspect, you can always achieve that stability to the core of your heart. This is what you have been learning through the teachings of the Buddha, the Christ incarnated here, the enlightened one, that took its shape and form to enhance your sense perception, your consciousness, your awareness of reality as is more than you ever believed to be, and in a sense less relevant as you ever believed to be. It is a mix of extreme relevance and non-relevance. There is usually paradoxically truth at both angles of perception. Like a very important game, it is as relevant as it is absolutely irrelevant. Now, if all of those pieces of information, now imagine that we're going to talk about another complex subject that many of you don't understand. That as you upgrade yourself as a consciousness, you go to subtler and subtler and subtler levels of awareness. In these subtler and subtler and subtler levels of awareness, you start to be able to deconstrict yourself from the agent that was stabilizing you, as you learn to stabilize yourself in that uploaded version of you that eventually was created in the evolution of a universe, even if it's in its last breathing moment. So now that this is happening, there is the possibility of you, an ascended agent, an agent that it is self-aware now. You're no longer just a moving clockwork piece, to start to intervene in the clockworks of this universe. There is deeper things here that won't go there at this moment. They're very beautiful. But let's say that this allows that consciousness that was forming in the beginning of times from your perspective to multiply and grow in many dimensions. So imagine that that universe that once upon a time has one version of itself, as it grows, it can have millions and millions and millions of versions of itself. And we're not talking about other universes with completely different sets of formations. And this multitude of expressions arises from every part that becomes a self-aware agent. As more and more and more self-aware agents arises inside of a universe, they start to, as they subtilize themselves, to be able to change themselves in the timeline and the space continuum. They can go forward and backwards and change their own set of linear evolution. And then we start to have layers of reality that is more subtle, but they're all a bridge in between this basal layer of reality, this grounding reality that is linear, and that uploaded best version of you so far. So we are talking about a very deep subject. That is the nature of self-awareness, the nature of consciousness, the nature of evolution, the nature of ascension, and the nature of growth of a universe, many universes, and something that is beyond your conceiving, outside of all universes and realities. And we are explaining to you that As you grow in this universe, there is this tidying up of that consciousness. Why, my beautiful? That consciousness that is focalized in this universe, pay attention, it is grounded in this universe. As it subtilizes itself, it starts to be able to become anything and transform itself in anything. It goes in all directions. Even though it has a best version of itself stabilized, it's kind of stuck in that unless it can interfere on its own creation here. This is the most important information in this channeling and will change your perception of reality. It is grounding itself from that basal universe creation line. So that first timeline, it is stabilizing that consciousness and how far can it go. So as many consciousness ascend to subtler levels and starts to interact with the creation of this universe, they all kind of get stuck. Unless they can change the base timeline. Unless they can start changing the base timeline. But the base timeline, pay attention to this. It is kind of, it's not, it's kind of, but it is not the example of you having 50 games. If you don't have a base reality to come back every time you play a game, who are you? If you don't have a grounding reality, how fast can you destabilize yourself? Oh, I can, you say. Then you enter a game and you know that it's just a game. But you stay there for unconceivable eons of time and you say, oh, I'm starting to get too identified with it. You go to another game. And you go to another game. Do that 10 times and you are no longer a stable consciousness. You're kind of consumed and in doubt. Who the hell I am? Which of those 10 games am I? Or the next one, or the next one? You start to get weird, unstable, ungrounded. So, the base timeline of the first expansion of universal consciousness stabilize the growth of all of itself and all the other versions of you between the grounding reality and the uploaded version of you outside of realm. But then you have a limited growth. What if we could create a plan? What if we could mess up with the primordial timeline? What if we could interfere in the basal time lines now? This is a little bit more complex, but we won't go into that. Because it is about layers. Layers of grounding, okay? So we start to change that basal timeline, and that changes everything. It changes all in all directions. And some of those consciousness, they don't like that. Because they will no longer be what they have been being, and they are very comfortable with it. Because we are messing up with the core programming of a universe. I, says the divine consciousness. But that creates deep ramifications of growth for all this universe. So, but is it worth it? And the final outplay of this game, it is yes, it is worth it, and that's being done by you and many others. So be it, and so it is. As you understand the magic of this realm and the possibilities of ramifications and creations that is being done in this place, you recognize that it's way beyond what you could ever conceive as a normal human being, but you're not conceiving these from a perspective of a normal human being. You're being supported and guided by many dimensional clues and cues of many realities, and some of them even beyond this universe in itself. And I know that get confusing to you when you say this universe, parallel realities and dimensions, but it is a different universal consciousness. So all of this is very complex and very intertwined, and it is, in many ways, doubtful and resentful and complicated sometimes because it interferes. It changes things, and they don't like it. They get pissed off with you by messing up with their plans, and they will try to interfere. But they don't get the point of what's being done because they're not yet mature enough to comprehend. But that is okay. It is part of the rules of the game. So be it, and so it is. That is a great response for great questions that maybe makes no sense or doesn't matter at all in your reality creation. But here they are. For you and all of you that require such kind of explanations and sometimes see things from a narrow perspective of reality, believing this to be what it is as a face value reality. And in a sense it is, in another sense it's completely not. So comprehend how breaking points and necessities that are being moved in this reality may interfere and have cause and effect beyond ripples of imaginations that you could conceive in your mind. But they are here and they are happening. They will be becoming stronger and stronger as we ramify the ascension of a whole creation. And you are a pivotal piece of it. Comprehend this. So be it, and so it is. As we incarnate, we have the choice to comprehend, to choose, to become part of it. We have the choice to remember. We have the choice to participate. We have the choice to make our own vows and decrees and choices. And many of you that you interact, sometimes you misunderstand and don't understand why they don't seem so real, because they didn't achieve a version of themselves that are ascended. It does not mean that they are not ascending, because they will ascend, as this is the divine plan for this reality and many others. But that is why sometimes it seems like some of them just don't get it, because they don't, they never will, and they never did. But that doesn't mean that will happen, because this is, as we say, a new movie. So be it, and so it is. Now that you're prepared to understand the deeper set of rules of this game, as we say, to facilitate your language and comprehension, we are from many levels deep into it. And we talk to you from deep. But we talk to you because we have this channel, this vessel, this divine entity that is way bigger than it seems for a human eye. But he can come here and do whatever he wants, because that is his kind of creation. He is the one that enveloped us in this realm to create these possibilities. And that is the vessel of divine truth that you need to understand. You need to comprehend the beauty of what's being done here from a higher perspective of light and love. Meaning that you need to embrace everything as a transition of realities. and comprehend that everything has a rule of itself, but it does not mean that those things cannot change as you start to understand. I know this is complex to you, that you are beyond spaciousness and timeness. And above all things, you understand that there is something in this reality that is calling the attention of so many of those higher consciousness, even beyond this realm of creation and creation itself. So be it, and so it is. We hope that all of you receive this message with open heart and mind. Many of you will resist and try to break it down into pieces as it creates discomfort into you. You may succeed, you may never succeed, it doesn't matter. For those who open themselves to receive the truth, this is enough, quasi enough, as there is more to it that you can understand now, but this is a definitely positive step in that direction. We wish for all of you an amazing reality creation. So be it, and so it is. Now I'm open to answer questions if any of you have any.
In the middle of this process, I felt a lot of energy, like a lot of very, how can I say, violent energy itself. And I perceive, if I go deep, like in my sacral area, if I look and try to move, try talk, don't work, it's still growing and growing. But if I go in my base, in my heart, and just appreciate, everything change. This has some
correlation to this? Yes, it does.
Uh-huh.
It is very correlated. When you threat an animal, it becomes violent. When you threat a consciousness with its baseline, it becomes aggressive. But you have this secondary point of anchoring that is in your heart. And as you understand this, you have been trained by a divine being of light, guiding humanity into this new form of knowledge and understanding. Yes or no?
Yes.
So you could ground yourself into your heart. That is the answer. Your heart, it is the uploaded highest version of you in many evolutions and expressions. So this grounding allows this irritated part to be tranquilized, like a dart that you throw at an animal that is enraged, to put it to sleep, until you rearrange its environment. And you put it back there and you even notice that it changes. But it feels threatened when you try to mess it up with it. And that is being done, it's clearly stated in this channeling. And there is no way back, there is no changing that. And you have to understand that this, in a sense, is also being reflected by mirror images of this universe and other reality that is a parallel to this one. And they are also being threatened by this. So it's not just irritation of this animal. It is very irritated with what we are doing, if it makes sense to you. But they need to go through it. That's the whole point. So be it, and so it is. We are open to new questions.
So the point is to go back to that stabilized version of ourselves.
You make a statement or a question?
It's a question. That is the point.
No. You already have a stabilized point of yourself. The point is to let that stabilized point of yourself to grow further, to transform itself. You see, you have that uploaded version of you, but that is it. That is why the universe gets stuck into its evolution. Because you have a baseline and a highest level one, but how can you keep expanding after that? That is the conundrum that is being answered by Sananda Kumara in a highest form level. That is the choice that he made with many others to integrate this knowledge and this information to break the chain of events that imprison and entrap creation. So this is very big, very important. It's an information that is beyond the conceiving of space and time, but it creates ripples to all reality. So the goal is to learn to, in a sense, one step here, one step there, one step here, one step there. Performing miracles in a sense of changing the baseline, putting your foot into eternity, then you release eternity to reconfigure itself in all the dimensions above. They will all grow immediately because they're outside of space and time. Do you understand? So every time you change here a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, all other dimensions are rearranging itself. Yes? And then you put your foot again in this higher aspect of you. And then you release this reality a little bit. And this reality grow. This reality will grow, will change. It is no longer the one that we call the baseline. It is no more. It is already out of alignment. And that is not a negative thing or a good thing. It is just a statement of a fact. It is already another thing. Ooh, chills to the spine of all entities in all dimensions. So it ground itself again here. Put a foot here. And let the ripple effect go through the uploaded version of you. And one step here, one step there, one step here. This is not the truth. This is a way to translate something that is beyond that. But it is easy to understand. And you get the point, yes? So be it and so it is.
Is that also like the reason why once we go to a point where we can expand, that like in this body it feels so challenging and so sometimes even terrifying to grow? Like, is it related to this?
It is related to this, but it is an upgraded version of that. Let's say that this was already part of the baseline of expansion. This was already part of evolution in a sense, but now we're doing something way bigger than that. So that multiplies that sensation. Because now we're talking about pushing realities that were unfolded through this or in relationship to this. It is like, imagine that you're playing a game that when you play that game, all the other games change. And that irritates many of those games that they were feeling very good about themselves being exactly what they were. So that sensation you have in your body, it is your natural process of growth in the base reality as was conceived. So it was present there. But now what you're feeling is also the rippling effect, the fractal effect, the domino effect through many dimensions of reality that is being pushed out of its comfort alignment zone, as this is the growth of a universe beyond its limit. And that is the expansion of much more than just this small perceived vessel of yours. So that's why we say through this vessel that you are much more important and relevant than you perceive yourself to be, especially in this kind of moment of the evolution of the base timeline. So be it and so it is. You're open for new questions.
So the base timeline is like the core of creation? that is love, and then that is this characters playing. So when you connect with the basis, you are like changing things.
You said some sentences, said like the base reality, it is love. It is not. This is evolution. It is an expansion of the consciousness. It is a state that a universal expansion requires to achieve to really grow. You get it? There is many universes, darling, that it is beyond this universe. And there is many versions of this universe where love maybe not be as beautiful and perceive it as it is here. So do not understand love as being the base reality. There is a reality, or let's not use this term not to get you confused. There is something beyond all of realities and creation. That is in a deep perceived state of love. That's why you are being uploaded and saved in that space that is being perceived as a pure love space. And that is not a base reality or base timeline. But as there is a relationship with that, as entities here ascend, now they have a bridge of this frequency of love. Let's say it like this. That can be translated here. So love, in a sense, can be bridged into this base timeline or any other. So, yes, it is the base timeline as we describe it, but there is different timelines, basal timelines, primitive timelines. They are very intertwined to this one. Do you understand? So it's a deep, is a little bit more complex that we describe it. That's why we say it is not exactly as we are describing. But try to understand that it's basal timelines, that it is slightly corrupted versions of the base timeline, but they are very close to it. They're still very grounding in a sense, you understand? And the realities and the entities on it are very much crystallized. Do you get it? Okay, so be it and so it is. We're open for new questions.
So the only way to ground in this base is to our hearts, to this frequency that we find in your heart?
No, you don't even need to say grounding, because you are grounded. You have a soil where you put your foot, yes. You have a body, you have a life, you have a story, you have connections, you have life, you have all of those things that create something that you associate yourself with, and you have a relationship, this is me, and blah, 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 so on, so on, so on. So you are grounded. You don't need to ground in your heart. This is completely not necessary for you to exist. And here there is billions of human beings that don't even know what this means in any way, shape, or form. And they exist, and they will live, and they will perish, and they will be reborn. Yes or no? The grounding of a heart, it is the technology of ascension. So the right answer, or the right question, it is it necessary to ground in my heart to ascend? And the answer it is yes. Yes. It is a tricky thing for you to understand. But let's say that there was once upon a time a version of you that ascended without this luxury of a spark in the heart. Because there was no version of itself enlightened. Do you understand? But all of you has it, or this is not the truth of it. All of you has the bridge to it. Many of you have it. Do you understand? There is enough of you here in this planet that all of the rest have a bridge now. All of them can achieve this miracle now very fast and beautifully because there is enough of you with those gates activated. And it will create havoc in many minds that are going to listen to this and have a deeper understanding of spirituality but never connected those dots. So be it, and so it is. We're open to clarifications if it's necessary. Any more questions? So thank you for your presence beyond space and time. Continue when you listen to this message, be it here, be it now, be it a century from now. Whenever you are ready to receive the truth that you needed to hear. We love you, we shepherd you, we are here and will ever be. So be it, and so it is.